popular as it may be now. At the time they ran, you'll remember, on immigration and a promise to treat America's borders like they are actual borders and matter, like this was a real country. Now, some Republicans in Congress want to betray that pledge in the most dramatic possible way. They're working tonight to pass a so-called discharge petition in the House. It would force votes on a slew of immigration measures, including some that would give amnesty to millions of illegal immigrants. How many? Well, we can't say, because when you push on the numbers a little bit, it turns out that nobody actually knows how many illegal immigrants live in this country. And when we say nobody knows, we mean nobody knows to within like 10 million. The estimate you hear from almost everyone is 11 million. 11 million illegal aliens living in this country. That number comes from Pew. It hasn't changed in a decade, and that should be a tip-off because over the last decade, illegal arrivals have continued, and now states are actively sabotaging deportation efforts. The real figure, it turns out, is much, much higher. ICE Director Thomas Homan admitted that much last year. So we know 11 million is not correct. So what's the real number? Well, an unpublished paper by Yale, 3 professors there, estimates there could be 23 million illegal immigrants in the United States. Their low-end estimate is 17 million. Even back in 2005, analysts at Bear Stearns guessed the real number was probably 20 million illegal in this country or more. The bottom line is we don't know exactly how many are here, but some members of the House Republican caucus think it is a good idea to give amnesty to some of them, or maybe all of them. That's not what their voters wanted, of course, but they apparently don't care. Congressman Jeff Denham is a Republican representing California. He joins us tonight. Congressman, thanks for coming on.
Tucker, thanks for having me back again.
Shouldn't we figure out how many illegal immigrants are in this country before we encourage more to come?
What we should do is actually secure our border. And the only way we're going to get the border secured is actually working together to pass something off the floor. The president continues to talk about $25 billion in secure border, making sure these caravans aren't coming across, stop the catch and release program. This is the only way we actually bring up that debate and actually put something on the president's desk.
But wait a second. Giving amnesty to people encourages more people to come here illegally. We know that. It was tried in 1986, and that was its effect. It's its effect every single time. So before we get more people coming across, and border security nobody takes seriously because it's always been a joke, why shouldn't we know how many are here? And why isn't Congress determined to find out how many are here? It seems like kind of a baseline issue.
Yeah, Tucker, rather than just doing a census to figure out how many people are here, why don't we stop them from coming here in the first place? Doing nothing means another 500,000 people will cross our border every single year. I've been in the majority now for 8 years. That's 4 million people. Shouldn't we stop right now and actually do what the president's asking us for? Even something that the Democrats had proposed a few years ago, and actually provide the funding, build the border security, do the surveillance, make sure that we actually have a guarantee to the American public that we've stopped this influx across our southern border.
Okay, well, how about this? Would you support punishing any employer caught employing an illegal alien, really punishing them, checking every employer in America with E-Verify Universal, and making sure that nobody's employing illegal aliens in lieu of American workers? Why not do that starting, I don't know, tomorrow?
Well, as you know, any government program, especially a new government program that needs technology, doesn't start tomorrow. I do support E-Verify. I do support a comprehensive
universal E-Verify.
Yeah, absolutely. But we have to fix the rest of our immigration process first. Right now, we have said, Republicans have said for quite some time now, we will not pass a comprehensive bill, but yet that's what's being proposed today. I want us to support what the president has talked about, dealing with border security, dealing with our dreamers right now, because they're in a different situation after following their government and signing up for DACA. We need to resolve that issue.
Following our government, we encourage them to come here illegally with their parents?
No. We had a president that passed an executive order, which I disagreed with. But nevertheless, the president of the United States passed an executive order that allowed DACA recipients to step forward. So these kids who have graduated from our high schools, who've grown up in this country, who know of no other country or no other home, they've done what their country's asked them to do, and they've signed up for this executive order under DACA.
It's not their country. They're not citizens. Okay. We'll just back up.
Well, look, if they've been here for decades, if they've graduated from our high schools with our kids.
Well, hold on. Right. But I'm just saying, in a world where there are a lot of priorities, why is this your number one priority? In your state, you've got more than 100,000 people living on the sidewalk. Those are American citizens. Why don't you deal with a problem like that first, or secure the borders first before you start passing out citizenship to people who are here illegally? I don't understand.
Yeah, that's kind of an argument that I get from some of the liberal networks. Why would you have a priority or this priority? I believe on addressing a number of different issues at the same time.
What are you doing about the 100,000 Californians living outside tonight? Okay, but it's not, look, giving citizenship and voting rights to people who are here illegally is not a way of securing our border. So why wouldn't you secure the border?
Because we have two issues that the president has asked for, including his 4 pillars. But the main thing that he continues to talk about, the president asks for a solution on DACA and for border security. I believe that we can give him both.
Okay, but why? I mean, let's leave the president out of this, just as someone who is hired to represent American citizens. Speak slowly so I can understand. Why would we give citizenship to anybody here illegally, give voting rights to anyone whose family snuck in, who came here illegally, before not a single new person crosses that border illegally, until you can look your voters in the face and say, our border is secure. Now maybe we can give citizenship to illegals.
Sure, and that dynamic changed under the previous president. But first of all, I don't believe in giving anybody anything. This would be an earned pathway. By all of the different bills, it would be at least a 10 to 12-year process. So you'd first sign up for 5 years of a temporary green card that would allow you to work or go to school or sign up for the military. And at the end of 5 years, after you've passed a background check, you've paid your fine and your fee, you've actually proven that you're not on government subsidies, and you're out there working or going to school or serving your country, at the end of 5 years,
none of that's real.
Your reward, the gift that you're talking about,
but the gift that you're talking about
is another 5 years, doing it all over again. So it's a 12-year process, 10 years before you'd actually be able to get a legal permanent residence card. But why not just do it like everybody else does it? Why not? Okay, but why not just, look, millions of people want to come here. Yeah. Why would you give a path to citizenship for people here illegally ahead of people who are waiting in line obeying our laws? I don't understand. I'm confused, I guess. And it's a 12-year process, and I believe that this earned pathway, this earned 12-year process would put you at the back of the line. But certainly somebody who's been here, who's graduated from our schools, that's been in our community, that has followed the executive order under Obama should have that opportunity. And look, doing nothing is not a solution. I am elected to lead. I don't get an opportunity just to sit back and wait and see what happens.
Okay. You know what? As a congressman representing California, you got a lot of problems. I mean, a lot of problems. You have
California has a lot of
high
problems,
number of yeah, you do. And so, like, why would this be anywhere near the top of your party list? I'm just completely confused. These are not American citizens. You've got tens of millions of hurting American citizens in your state, and you're putting these people ahead of them. And I don't understand it.
Well, you're elected to lead, and we've got to do something. And the president campaigned on border security. The only way we're going to get that, because you know the rules of this House and the Senate, you've got to get 60 votes. The only way you're going to get the 60 members on a bipartisan border security bill is with this solution that is equally as important that the president of the United States is asking for.
Congressman, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Hey, Tucker, it's good being with you again.
Thank you. The president met with California lawmakers today and with police to discuss the effect of sanctuary city laws. During that meeting, the president blasted MS-13 members and blamed sanctuary city laws for protecting them. Here's part of it.
We're taking people out of the country. You wouldn't believe how bad these people are. These aren't people. These are animals. And we're taking them out of the country at a level and at a rate that's never happened before. Mexico does nothing for us. They do nothing for us.
Kristen Gaspar is on the San Diego County Board of Supervisors, was at that meeting today, and she joins us tonight. Kristen, thanks a lot for coming on. What is the effect of these policies from your perspective on San Diegans, for example?
Well, as you say, California has a lot of problems, and one of our biggest problems is actually our governor, who's supporting putting criminals back out on our streets. Now, today at the roundtable with President Trump, we had 16 leaders from across California. People are pushing back on our governor, saying enough is enough. We've reached a tipping point in our state, and we heard story after story of the impact back in all of our communities. For a community like San San Diego, human trafficking, drug trafficking, weapons trafficking across our border because they are insecure. And I shared with the president a story about a young man, Alexander Mason, who lost his life at the age of 27. He was murdered, shot and killed by an illegal immigrant who had already been deported from our country. Now that killer is lying in Tijuana, holding out in a motel. We know his location, and there isn't a thing we can do about it here in the U.S.
Well, I'm confused. I mean, he's been charged, I assume, with murder in the United States. He's in Tijuana, which is right across the border. Why aren't Mexican authorities helping?
The process is terrible. It's a long road for this poor family, the Mason family. This could be a multi-year process. Because Mexico does not have the death penalty, our own DA has to sign off and pledge that when he's back in the United States, that he cannot face the death penalty in our country where he committed this heinous crime.
Do people support these policies? I mean, we act as if California is unified in support, I guess, of its governor's policies, of your attorney general's policies. But are your constituents in favor of sanctuary policies?
California is not a lost cause yet, as evidenced by the thousands of emails that have poured into my office. Each and every time we have a vote come up as an elected leader, you'll get some people that communicate with you. Really, the most I've seen is several hundred over an issue. And in this case, I have literally 3,000 plus emails that have come to my office. Thank you notes, postcards, you name it, and a very thin stack of about less than 50 emails and people that think what I'm doing is truly terrible.
Think that the governor really should protect criminals over American citizens. Dementia. Kristen, thank you. I appreciate it. Good luck.
Thank you.
Well, two former intelligence officials say that Obama CIA Director John Brennan lied about the Steele dossier in the boldest and most transparent way. We've got details on that next.
People would.
Well, we've got an important public safety announcement tonight about the creepy porn lawyer. If you see him outside your window after dark, do not call him out. Absolutely do not approach him. He may be dangerous. He will certainly be oleaginous. Fortunately, though, you're unlikely to personally encounter the creepy porn lawyer unless you live very close to a CNN or MSNBC studio. An updated count of his television appearances by the Media Research Center found that the creepy porn lawyer has been interviewed 147 times since March 7th. That's more than 2 appearances a day, every day. 74 of those televised interviews were on CNN. They're proud of that. 57 were on MSNBC. If you want to remain safe from the creepy porn lawyer, we'd advise 2 courses of action. First, remain near bright lights and away from empty alleyways. And second, stay very close to a Fox studio in your area. He's proved totally unwilling to even get anywhere near that. Thank Kevin. Well, on Twitter, you may read former CIA head John Brennan spouting off about the political news of the day, attacking the president's dishonesty, he says. But it turns out Brennan himself is a liar. He's been caught lying, odd for a government official. Last year, for example, Brennan told Congress that the infamous Steele dossier had no influence at all on the intel community's claim that Russia interfered in the 2016 election. Here's a selection.
Do you know who commissioned the Steele dossier?
I don't.
Did the CIA rely on it?
No.
Why not?
Because we didn't. It wasn't part of the corpus of intelligence information that we had. It was not in any way used as a basis for the intelligence community assessment that was done.
Ooh, busted liar. By the way, Brennan, you should know this, is an NBC and MSNBC paid contributor now, needless to say. 2 top former intel officials, though, dispute his claim, the one you just heard, that the dossier formed no part of the corpus of intelligence used by our government to spy on the Trump campaign. Retired National Security Agency Director Michael Rogers and former Director of National Intelligence Jim Clapper both admit now that the Steele dossier and its Clinton campaign-funded allegations did, in fact, influence the intel community assessment. We knew that, but it's nice to hear it confirmed. Molly Hemingway is senior editor at The Federalist, and she joins us tonight. Molly, I know you've been following this carefully. A lot of these stories seem to lead back to this guy, John Brennan. And you would think, as the former head of the CIA, he's someone you'd be able to trust, but he seems not only a liar, but an inept one. Am I misreading this?
We have a problem with multiple heads of intelligence agencies, and that does include Brennan, who has a history of lying specifically about spying on American citizens. So it's difficult to hold him, take him seriously. But we've also had problems with falsehoods being said also by James Clapper, who gave inconsistent testimony about his leaking to the media. And we have also had problems with James Comey himself, whether he understands what a leak is and how he has been involved in it. But one of the things that's interesting is Clapper and Comey have been so much a part of this story, and we've seen their names a great deal. But Brennan has been able to kind of stay out of the limelight until recently, where people are starting to piece together just how integral he was to the entire Russia narrative. So, for instance,
there was a time. Well, please go ahead.
Yeah, he actually launched the investigation. He has bragged about how he was involved in launching the investigation. He also was really key in briefing Harry Reid, which Harry Reid has said he understood that he was being briefed by Brennan specifically so he would leak that information and get it out to the media, and also pressure James Comey. And then, these other things that are interesting that are coming out now about how he claimed that the dossier wasn't used, which made no sense already because we know the dossier was used to secure a wiretap against someone in the Russia investigation. And also just, it just stands to reason that it would have been included. But now we actually have people who do have a little bit more integrity, particularly Mike Rogers, saying that, of course, it was used in the intelligence community assessment.
It's becoming clear that a lot of the secrecy surrounding these activities is designed not to protect the United States from foreign threats, but to protect the misdeeds of the people gathering the intelligence. It's CYA.
Yes, it does seem that has become a big part of the operation. Whether people got in over their head, whether they were led astray by Brennan and they did things that maybe they shouldn't have done, it does seem that a lot of what we've seen in the last few months is about attempting to keep people from finding out the full extent of what was happening. Today, the New York Times did report, based on just a widespread leaking from people who were involved in the investigation, that yes, people are now admitting they were spying on the Trump campaign in a fairly widespread fashion. It wasn't just Carter Page, it was 4 top officials. They weren't just using FISA wiretaps, they were also using national security letters and human intelligence, at least one human intelligence source. So this is busting wide open, and I think people will start demanding a little bit more in terms of just what the FBI and other intelligence agencies were thinking when they began spying on the political campaign of a major party.
Liberals used to be worried about things like this, not anymore. Molly Hemingway, thank you. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. The University of Colorado is charging students money and giving them credit for their work in, quote, witnessing whiteness. We'll tell you what that means. You're helping to pay for it. Next.
Time to go.
A series of, quote, witnessing whiteness workshops in their hometowns. The program is offered by the school's graduate certificate program in diversity, social justice, and inclusion. That's, of course, a department name that should strike fear into all who hear it, and for good reason, because, among other things, the program focuses on the alleged traits of the, quote, dominant white culture. These traits include, quote, superficiality and, quote, extreme exploitation of labor and resources for profit. David Bernstein is the founder of the group Run for America. He wrote the book Fast Future, How the Millennial Generation is Shaping Our World. David, thanks for coming on.
Good to be with you, Tucker.
You a little surprised that racist crap like this exists in the open in 2018?
Well, I don't know that I would necessarily call this racist crap, but I think the reality is that there is a white experience in America that is different from a black experience in America. I think anybody who's lived in America knows that those two things are different things. And, while I don't necessarily agree with every way that these folks are going about it, I think it is the beginning of perhaps a conversation about what does it actually mean to have a white experience. We've been studying the black experience in America.
It's not the beginning of a conversation. It's the beginning of a series of attacks on people on the basis of their skin color. So to say that white culture exploits in an unusually aggressive way the labor of others, that's an attack. And by the way, is it true? I mean, is white culture more likely to do that than, I don't know, Chinese culture? I don't know, but I know racism, textbook definition when I see it, and that's lumping a group of people together on the basis of their appearance and immutable characteristics and attacking them. That's what this is. Why is this not racist?
Well, I think the way in which it is presented certainly is not the direction that you want to go if you want to actually do what I think really should be done, which is actually have a conversation about what white privilege actually means in this society. You and I both know, as white men sitting here, that there is such a thing as white privilege.
I don't know that, actually. I mean, there are non-white immigrant groups that have, on average, higher annual incomes than average white Americans. It's much more complicated than you and other sort of glib apologists for racism suggest that it is. You can't generalize about people on the basis of their skin tone, right?
Of course you can't.
Or can you?
Of course you can't. You can't generalize. But there are trends that we have seen. It would be disingenuous for us to suggest that there aren't a larger number of, say, white people than black people in this country who have benefited tremendously from their privilege. I think that would be a disingenuous statement over time, and that there aren't more white people who've exploited.
I don't know. I mean, wait, hold on. Stop. Are you comfortable making generalizations about other racial and ethnic groups that are negative? Any generalizations? Go ahead and try one. You just said that white privilege is real. No, I'm serious. If we're going to have the honest conversation that you're calling for, then I call on you to be honest and make a negative generalization about any other racial or ethnic group in this country. Go ahead. You got the floor.
I think that I see where you're trying to go.
No. You don't need to think anything. I'm asking you, will you make a negative generalization about another racial or ethnic group?
I'm not going to be baited into.
I'm not baiting you. I'm asking you a sincere question. Will you or won't you?
Here is.
Oh, the answer's no. Why?
Because, Tucker, the reality is when we try and talk about and understand things that are going on, whether they're generations, whether they're groups of people, we make generalizations in order to have a conversation, because of course every single individual person is different. But you won't make a generalization except about one. No, hold on. I'm inviting you to make a negative generalization, as you just did about one group, about. Generalize. I get it. You want to have an honest conversation. I get it. Let's do that right now on live TV. Again, why don't you make a single negative generalization about any other racial or ethnic group? And again, I give you the floor. I'll be quiet as you speak. Go ahead and do that. Well, look, I think there's a claim that can be made about the fact that there now in this country we have people who are benefiting tremendously from a huge move towards diversity and inclusion, quote unquote, programs that are designed to prioritize people of other ethnicities.
Which people?
Over people.
I mean, be
a
lot more specific. No, make a generalization about a culture,
Latino, African-American and Latino people over white people?
Be precise. So, no, you're critiquing a program. That's a program that you're critiquing, and I think you're right. Critique the culture, as you just did white culture, whatever that is. But you're assuming it's real, so tell me, generalize about another racial ethnic group's culture, if
Tucker,
you would.
I think you're missing an important distinction here. Because you're missing an important distinction.
You're missing the important distinction, which is this only goes in one direction, and you bully people by making generalizations that are not strictly speaking true, and if you're not on board with it, you're a racist, and then you get to attack those people. Because that doesn't apply to any other group, which is itself racist. Will you acknowledge that?
I see where you're going with this argument, Tucker, but I think the reality is that
that's the argument. I just said it out loud.
There's a group of people who have been systemically oppressed in this country for a long period of time. And those are people who are overwhelmingly people who are African American and Latino. There's a long history of this. You and I both went took U.S. history courses.
You're changing the conversation. What you did was you said it was okay to attack one culture, but it's not okay to attack other cultures. And I'm asking you why that is. An 18-year-old college student did not participate in Jim Crow, did not participate in slavery, is not most of the time knowingly participating in the oppression of anybody, but it's okay to attack that person because his ancestors did something bad, but that's not okay to do to other groups because why? You don't have an answer.
Look,
no one ever calls you guys on this, but I just did.
I think you're really missing the point here, which is that saying if you just because you want to say that someone is being criticized for the basis of what a culture is doing, that's racist.
No.
Collective
race guilt is wrong. It's racist to attack people for things they didn't do because of the way they look. It's really simple. You're on board with it. I'm not. And unfortunately, we're out of time. But David, thank you. I appreciate it. Well, up next, a full year and millions of dollars has been spent investigating Russia. But it turns out Russia is not the real problem with espionage. China is. Part 2 of our China series is next.
You're trying to lower your very high...
Well, for more than a year, the only espionage threat you've heard about is Russia, even though the worst thing anyone's pinned on Vladimir Putin so far is a handful of dopey Facebook ads that almost nobody saw. But just because the Russian threat is grotesquely overblown doesn't mean that foreign spying isn't a problem for us. It definitely is a problem. Chinese spying is the real problem. China is our main rival on the world stage. The Chinese government spies on us relentlessly, on our companies, on our military, on our government. Hundreds of thousands of Chinese nationals live in the United States. Most of them are harmless, but some large number of them are spies. In March of 2016, for example, a Chinese national pleaded guilty to helping hack the computer networks of major defense contractors. Data related to the C-17 strategic transport aircraft and the F-35 fighter jet was stolen and made its way back to China. And it's not the first time the Chinese have stolen vital military secrets. They've done it a lot. Their industrial espionage is, if anything, even more aggressive. Earlier this year, a Chinese wind turbine company, for example, was convicted of paying an engineer to steal secrets from an American manufacturer. And to add insult to injury, after stealing the information, the Chinese company then canceled $800 million in contracts. This is not uncommon. The U.S. Trade Representative estimates that the overall cost from China's theft of American intellectual property, industrial secrets, could reach $600 billion every single year. That's almost as much as all annual trade between this country and China. Chinese businesses are themselves a front for more conventional espionage, since major Chinese companies are, by definition, closely intertwined with the Communist Party and the Chinese military in many cases. Intelligence experts warn that the Chinese mobile phone company ZTE, for example, could easily begin spying on any American who owns their products were they allowed to expand their share of the U.S. market, as they're currently trying to do. And those are just cell phones. How about email and other electronic communications? Well, according to a high-level government source who spoke to us, the Chinese government already has direct or indirect control of much of the architecture of our domestic internet here in this country. If China wants to know what you're doing, they probably already can. How did that happen exactly? How did we get to this place? Well, slowly and intentionally on the part of China. Our leaders, meanwhile, were not paying attention to the Chinese threat. Some of them knew about it, but didn't care. They're getting very rich from China. Not coincidentally, some of these very same people are the ones now telling you that Russia is the biggest threat we face. It goes without saying that they're lying, and they know they're lying, but what they're really doing is trying to cover their tracks. Bill Gertz has been covering the threat from China longer than almost any other American journalist. He's a senior editor at the Washington Free Beacon and the author of I War, War and Peace in the Information Age. Bill Gertz joins us tonight. Bill, thanks for coming on.
Sure, good to be here.
So give us a sense, if you can, and I know it's a complex topic, but give us a sense of the scale of Chinese spying on American industries, government, and our military.
Sure. It's a three-pronged threat. You have traditional spying. Right now in Alexandria, there are 2 ex-CIA officers who are under investigation or being prosecuted for spying-related activities in China. Then you have the cyber threat, and this is a massive theft of technology from both the government and the private sector. And then last are what they call the non-traditional collectors. That's the 350,000 Chinese students here, researchers, academics, and they're all working to gather as much a secret government, Chinese government-directed program to steal all the most modern technology. They're going after the cutting-edge stuff right now, artificial intelligence and quantum computing.
So who's mining the store? Who's protecting American industrial secrets and military data?
Well, it's the FBI's job to go after Chinese spies. Just this week, Bill Evanina, the head of the counterintelligence unit called the National Security and Counterintelligence Center, said that not enough has been done to deal with this Chinese espionage and technology collection threat. And he basically upgraded the threat during the Obama period, where they didn't go after this at all. Now he said it's a grave threat to U.S. national security, and it's primarily in this economic sphere that they're going after our secrets, as well as military technology as well.
So, I mean, given that the Chinese economy is about to surpass America's in size, assuming it hasn't already, they are obviously our main rival on the world stage. Why didn't the Obama administration for 8 years respond to what is clearly the preeminent threat we face?
Well, it's the same thing with the Russia probe, too. They knew about the Russia interference going back to 2015 and did nothing. So basically, it's been a passive approach. They relied on just diplomatic niceties, and they basically ignored this growing intelligence threat that, as you said, is the massive amounts have been totaled between 200 billion and 600 billion annually in our most cutting-edge technologies.
Well, you would think that American industry, from whom this data is being stolen, would be complaining in public, but they're not.
No, they're not. There was a meeting last year with a lot of the tech chiefs with Trump in the White House, and basically all of them said, you've got to do something to cut off this Chinese theft of technology. They're just pillaging everything that the Silicon Valley has, and there's been literally nothing done to try and stop that.
It's absolutely terrifying. Very quickly, do you think, almost a rhetorical question, but the relentless focus on Russia hacking our election, whatever that means, does that detract from our awareness and our ability to respond to China?
Absolutely. I mean, Russia does pose a threat, but it's a different level of a threat. I mean, all you have to do is look at the two economies. The Russian economy is 7 times smaller than the Chinese economy. So they're not as great a threat as China. And so it's really important that the United States government take action to stop Chinese espionage.
Yeah, like tonight. Bill Gertz, thank you. You've been reporting on this for longer than most people have been paying attention, that's for sure. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York says that if Lehman Brothers were called Lehman Sisters instead, the entire 2008 financial collapse never would have happened. More from the genius of New York State coming up. The 2008 financial collapse was huge and complex. Its causes are many: bad risk models, bad government policies for sure, bad business decisions, probably other things too. But while speaking on a panel of feminists yesterday, Senate non-entity Kirsten Gillibrand of New York identified another cause you probably hadn't even thought of: gender. Men are the problem, she said. Here's what Gillibrand said about the collapse of the investment bank Lehman Brothers. Watch.
That's why the empowerment of women is so important throughout the economy and through leadership through these offices, because we don't value women in society, and that's just the fact. You know, if it wasn't Lehman Brothers but Lehman Sisters, we might not have had the financial collapse.
Tammy Bruce is a radio host and president of Independent Women's Voice, and she joins us tonight. Tammy, I feel almost mean playing that. I don't dislike Kirsten Gillibrand. I felt sorry for her watching that because it didn't make any sense. It was kind of sad. But I thought maybe there's something deeper here, and since you're a resident deep person, I thought I'd run it by you. What do you think of that?
Well, you know, I can get as deep as just saying that it was stupid. It's insulting.
Yeah.
It is sexist. And it's the argument that misogynists make. What she was referring to is a study that said because women are risk averse, that they would have taken less chances, and so Lehman Brothers would have been just fine. This argument, though, puts all women into a category of expecting their behavior to be based on their gender. And it is gender stereotypical. It is based in a sexist expectation that women are going to behave a certain way because of their sex. And this is the other argument that misogynists use, is that women are risk averse, and they're, as a result, more frightened by things. decisions. They're less apt to take risks. And, risks does not mean that that it's a dumb decision. Look, women's lives are filled with risks. When we wake up in the morning, it's risky. We get pregnant, it's risky. We give birth to children, it's risky. We've changed the academy. We've changed the military. Everything we do every day is a risk, and we do it well. But the arguments by misogynists are that by pinning all women together through their gender is that it's why women don't make history. It's that women are not brave enough to do great art, that we aren't interesting enough to invent things, that we are not brave enough to be military leaders. She's arguing there, through this risk-averse, gender-based stereotype, that a woman could also not be a president, because it's the same framework. And this is what we have to reject. And so, of course, it's insulting, and it is misogynist and sexist to boot.
So I guess I'm looking at it from the other angle, which is, why is she attacking men? You know what I mean? Like, I'm a man. I have a son who's an adult man. He didn't do anything to tank the banks. Do you know what I mean? He didn't.
You talk about it all the time,
profit from credit default swaps. Like, why are you blaming a huge group for the sins of a few? Because
it's what you've recognized repeatedly, and I think exclusively, is this argument by the left about toxic masculinity. It is about condemning and indicting all men for simply being men. And her argument, in order to counter that, you can't argue what feminists have always, or at least my generation did, that women can do what men do. We, in fact, are very similar. Our styles might be more different, but women can accomplish what men accomplish. What she's arguing is, since there's toxic masculinity, and that is a foundational theory now of the left, we have to counteract it by saying that the peaceful, simple woman who is not as aggressive is the answer. So this now condemns them into putting women into one category in order to succeed at condemning all men. And what they end up doing is saying that women can't be president, women can't be a leader, women by their, well, look, we had one president who behaved this way, and it was Barack Obama. A man who was too afraid to confront ISIS, too afraid of his own red line with Syria, too afraid to really govern and help the economy, too afraid of tyrants around the world. That's what she's advocating for, and it certainly is not a feminine trait.
Well, I don't blame all women for Kirsten Gilligan.